To my dad, who fought in Iwo Jima, but you would have never known that because people of color never got any recognition during that time. And when my dad came home, he wasn't welcomed, and he was one of very few that survived some of the attacks in Iwo Jima, so he was never the same when he came back. He was never the same. And it created quite a problem in terms of our family and the relationship he had with my mom. Leon and Leonard being so much alike, if Leonard did something, Leon did it. So when Leon decided to join, not get drafted, but to join, Leonard wanted to join. And they would not let Leonard join because they would not send two over at the same time. So when one came back, the other went. The experience that each of them had was traumatic. Leon and Leonard were not into drugs when they went into the military. When they got over there, the first reaction that Leon had was chaos, lack of organization, corruption, drugs, surviving as a group, looking out for each other, people being popped off, knocked off, a lot of, they never experienced a cohesive plan. It was always like they were in a position not to implement an action, but just to sustain, maintain, and move forward. And I heard that not just from Leon and Leonard, but I heard it from other young people that were lieutenants and that were in the military. We held back our ability to be successful in Vietnam. And there's documentation to support that now. What was I doing during that time? I didn't think it was right because of the feedback I was getting from my friends and from kids that I was losing, that I grew up with, that were dead. That were dead for what reason? They're really, and you're right when you share the, communism is a very, we grew up, communism, that's a bad thing. But from a marketing perspective, I think they use the vehicle of communism as a tool to encourage us to fight over there. And I think it evolved, the truth evolved. I mean, the French were in there, and the French didn't survive it prior to our getting involved. And I continue to be convinced that the whole model of that war had to do with resources. And we sacrificed American lives for the interest of higher level resources. I mean, it's all about control. I cannot, and still to this day, do not see the basis of why we were in Vietnam. But during that time, my experience was protesting. But I wasn't a violent protester. But I didn't agree with it, and I didn't talk about it a lot because my brothers were over there, sacrificing their lives. My friends are over there. Relatives were over there, sacrificing their lives. So there were protesters that were really adamant about it, and it created this. There were so many people that were being hated because they felt that way. It created a lot of confusion for my brothers. But then they were there, and they were realizing that there really wasn't a plan to win. There was a plan to just be there and function. And their friends are being popped off. You didn't know if you were going to survive the next day. The key to their recovery was faith and religion. Jesus Christ, accepting faith and prayer. That's how they managed to move away from what they saw. That's how they managed to get past the guilt that they felt for the things that they had to do to survive there. And these kids, when they see people blown up and, bodies all over the place and people being abused and corruption, it was extremely shocking for them. Like I said, I grew up around the church. My grandmother was a minister. We grew up around prayer and faith. But after that, when they got over there, they said, John, we did drugs. It allowed us to get through.
To survive.
Yes,
Yeah.
to get through. And then when they got home, we weren't set up to where we are today, where we're working with the young people and people that are dealing with issues of drugs. So it really, my brother, for example, he was in a vehicle, Leon. He's still having a personal frustration. He broke both of his arms because he was in a vehicle and it blew up. And then next thing he knew, he was on the ground in they had him all white and everything, but he broke both of his arms. So years later, he wanted to deal with medical compensation because he was still dealing with issues.
Yeah.
They lost his paperwork.
Oh.
Other friends that were white, I'm not being racist here, but they were white, that were in the same situation, some were injured like he was, they got Purple Hearts. He didn't get a Purple Heart. Many of the soldiers that sacrificed and risked their lives just as anybody else did, of color, did not get Purple Hearts or recognition. So even within that commitment to support our country, they were abused over there. All of them were abused, white and black, everybody was abused. But even within that, they dealt with abuse.